Disclaimer. Twigs Cafe Radio and TwigsCafeRadio.com and its owners and associates take no responsibility for the opinions, statements, or claims made by the talk show hosts or their guests. Statements or show topics are not necessarily the beliefs of the station.
I hope you can hear us now live in beautiful Tunkhannock from the top of Twigs Restaurant. Welcome to Jasikoff and Friends, Sanity Check, and Just to Serve with Andy Ostrowski. This is Twigs Cafe Radio, and for the next 3 hours, your alternative in the local talk. So if you want to blow off some steam, get that blood pressure down before dinner, or just sit back and chill, you could give us a call at 570-836-2920. You could text talk me at 570-677-2607. Andy's not in studio today, but he will be on air with us for a while, and you could give us drop us an email at twigscaferadio@gmail.com. Check us out on Facebook. We'll monitor that throughout the show, or you can leave us a message at 570-836-4771. Good afternoon, Lori.
Hey, good afternoon. How are you?
This is it. Hey, wait a minute. Hey, Andy, you could be in trouble out there. You know that? I mean,
I'm in your seat, Andy.
Do we got Andy on the line? Hello. Yeah. There you go. You said you could be in trouble, man. Lori's sitting in that. Although, of course, next week I might be in trouble, so I don't know. You guys might be bumping me.
Well, I think that you're upgrading if you go to Lori, that's for sure.
Well, there's not going to be no argument over that one, that's for sure. So we got a lot coming on and going on even next week. But tomorrow we will be in Harrisburg. We're going to be down at your hearing tomorrow, Andy, and we're looking forward to that. And we just want to make sure everybody knows that we will be doing the live broadcast or rebroadcast, right?
I wanted to just send out a quick apology. We were all over the place. And I do want to say it wasn't Holly and my fault. It was everybody else. No, we had a lot of trouble with switching the name servers over, and our internet went down. And I have to say, Frontier, shout out to Frontier, because they really came through for us today. But if you had trouble yesterday, everything's going to be played tomorrow. So
yeah, and actually, Andy, everything's been upgraded to super duper speed. How you like that? So
yeah, and I was just going to say, I mean, it sounds like bad news, but there's some good news that I actually got some complaints from listeners about yesterday. So that means that there were people tuning in that were disappointed to not hear us, crisp and clean. So. Things, little bugs get worked out and everything's back on track.
Yeah. Well, and they should have a much better reception now. Everything should be up and running.
We just keep moving ahead here. That's it, right?
I know that Lori and Holly and you, Lou, you guys are all working hard to really get this effort going, and all your efforts are appreciated, and they should be appreciated.
Thank you,
So
Andy.
you're all set for tomorrow, Andy?
You know what? I'm sitting here in front of some piles of paper and my laptop trying to print out some documents, and it's just been more of a process of just kind of just being here reflecting on all this stuff more than like studying and researching and stuff like that. Someday this story is going to get out there, and honestly, the amount of work that I have done over the past 6 years that nobody knows about. I mean, there's just some of the things that I've written and the amount of stuff that's out there. It's just unbelievable, and. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to tomorrow, and for one to kind of get it behind me, but to to finally sit and address some of these issues that we've been anticipating addressing for a long time.
And I will be your second chair tomorrow. That's it. So I'm looking forward to that also. Hey, Andy, the new websites are ready to go, and that's what a lot of everything's been going on, right? The whole switching around. Twigs Cafe Radio is up and running now, right, Lori?
Yes,
the right
it is.
way?
And you can listen live on that. We've got the link, I hope, going. I should check that. And your name got switched over to look up the sanity check. Yes,
sanity check.
Online and Justice Served online, and that will be.
And Holly has the other site ready to roll here pretty soon. It'll be another day or two, Andy, the whole thing. So we welcome people to go.
I got some good feedback on the sites too. One or two people said that they had seen the sites and were impressed with how much work had been put into them and the amount of information's up there. I really haven't had a chance to get a look at them in much detail, but Holly and Lori, again, your guys' efforts are appreciated.
Holly's been working really hard.
And,
she does a great job.
Nobody's seen the other site though. Only me.
Ooh.
I'm the only one that has been allowed to see the site. So you guys are going to be happy to see that.
Is it one of those now that you know?
Yes.
Holly? Now that he's seen it?
But we have a live chat. We're going to be able to do a live chat, Andy, so folks that are listening be able to chat with us right there live as we're doing a show. Pretty soon we're going to even do we're going to be doing Skype, so that's another whole new thing coming down the pike here. We asked people to sign up for that email blast, and you got people now that are starting to sign up for that, so we're pleased with all of that stuff. Also, we want to remind that Donald LaBar now is on Saturday mornings, right?
Oh yeah, fabulous show. Great information. Yeah. Must listen to it.
It is.
Yeah, it's great.
I got to tell you, man, if you haven't listened to it, and that'll be archived also, right? Is that archived on the new site?
Not yet. It will be. It'll be on her bio page,
okay.
and all that's it's getting in there.
Oh, good stuff. So, and then Andy, next week you have some more. You have some discipline lawyers coming on.
Yeah, I've got. In fact, there's this one woman, Zena Crenshaw, who has really been quite an advocate out there. I haven't studied all her stuff in detail, but I know what I was looking at was very impressive and is connected with this National Forum on Judicial Accountability. And then there's another fellow from Florida, a guy by the name of Mark Adams, and he's working on some stuff, and we're going to try to connect, on some media efforts, through Twigs Radio. But we're going to talk to him about a case that he was involved in. Rigged election voter machine counting down in Florida. So,
no.
Yeah, believe it. Yeah.
Believe it or not, yeah, we have to do that for Thursday. Believe it or not.
Real interesting. And then there's another discipline lawyer who also does a radio broadcast. Catherine Hine. You and she have been in contact, and she's connected through that circle of lawyers that I've been dealing with, the Discipline Lawyer series. So. In the context, coming off the heels of this disciplinary proceeding I'm going through, we're going to kind of get back to that and stay with it here, through the year.
And we later on actually Sanity Check, Mark Chamberlain and his new book will be here. Terry Martin will be joining us. They're bringing up a video crew, so we're gonna be doing another documentary up here, Andy. I mean, maybe that's the new thing here. Folks will be starting to. And once again, if folks didn't hear your show on Thursday, I believe, right?
Last Thursday, yeah.
Yeah, Dupree, James Dupree was in here, and that whole documentary, and we'll be posting that whole video too. That
and it is on YouTube, I believe, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Yeah,
okay.
That Joe Sapienza posted it on his YouTube channel.
So that, and I think it's on ours, Andy, too. So check out Twigs Cafe Radio on YouTube and see if it's uploaded on that. If it's not, I'll work real hard to get it on there.
Well, I thought that turned out pretty good. And
yes,
then,
it did.
It's a good promotional spot. So yeah, that was a good interview and good to have those guys up here. A lot of good stuff going on here, guys. Huh?
We do. I do have one email that I want to. Share with you guys. It says Bill Lawrence exposes insider Lloyd Smucker's crony liberal voting record, and he has somebody running against him, Chet Byler of Lancaster County businessman, without connections to the special interest who pluck feathers from the public goose.
I looked at that race, and I think there's a number of candidates running in that. And that Jim Haggerty, the independent who we've been in touch with, I think that's his district. So we're going to have an independent that we're in touch with, getting in there. So let's talk to him about what it means to get smuckered, right, Lou?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I definitely going to be involved with that one way or the other down there, and I want to make sure that folks know what this guy is all about. Too bad you're not in studio today here, Andy, because we have Jerry Birmelin, who's going to come on here once we take our first break, and he's been part of the part of the legislature for 22 years, and he's throwing his hat back into the ring. But more important than all of that, maybe, he was actually on the Judiciary Committee for 20 years, Andy, and he was just there was some great stuff that he's kind of just we were just talking about. Part of it was how do you get a public hearing, and it has to be approved by the chairs of the committee. And once again, this is all learning about the process. Remember, we've been talking about that, Andy.
Yeah.
I mean, people could go out and they could they could do all their rallies and they could do their protests, but until you understand the process and who's in charge of the process, I remember when we were talking about, even with Senator Fulmer, and he had told me, listen, Lou, he said, no matter what, you could get every state senator to sign on to the Voter Choice Act, but if that chairman doesn't want it to come out of committee, he ain't going nowhere. So we're going to pick Jerry Birmelin. You're going to like this guy, and if you
I like him already. I'll just say I like him already.
Well, and I did a release about my discipline in that letter that I wrote to the Supreme Court that I read on the air. I got some feedback on that somebody wants to run it as an op-ed on Penn Live, and I sent this out to I got all the Pennsylvania state legislators, and I got all their emails, and I sent that out to them. So I'd like to forward it to him and maybe get his thoughts on it.
Absolutely, man, and that's all good stuff, and that's what we're going to do after we're done with Mark Chamberlain and Terry Martin today. We're really just going to go over your case and go through some of the emails, and we'll have X online with us, and we'll be talking about all that stuff. The only other thing I really wanted to bring up, Andy, was and we've had so much stuff going on, and so many people are coming in and out of studio every day, it seems now. And I have this stack of stuff that I've been wanting to get to, but one of them was this whole FBI is, it seems as though they're ready to indict Hillary Clinton, and they're going to recommend it to the U.S. Attorney General. The agency's investigators plan to blow the whistle and go public with their findings. Former U.S. House Majority Leader Tom DeLay told Newsmax, and it says, I have friends that are in the FBI, and they tell me they're ready to indict, DeLay said this past week on the Malzberg show. But that all being said, this is a double-edged sword here, because what we've been hearing is that the FBI, regardless, because they really don't think the U.S. Attorney General is going to go ahead with any kind of investigation or any kind of indictment against Hillary. But then, of course, you have the FBI. It seems as though they're just going to leak this information out. And I guess it's just a double-edged sword. You know me, I want to get as much information out on this criminal as much as we can. But on the flip side, I really don't want the FBI or these agencies to be used as a fulcrum against people without going through the proper channels. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, and I haven't followed that as closely as I would like to with everything else that's going on, but I'm on the side. The chatter that I see, and I haven't studied it in detail, is that there are legitimate charges here that should be looked into. So let's get it out there.
And it all goes back to what, Andy? Where does it all come back to?
Transparency.
It comes back to transparency, and it all comes back to the courts.
And it all comes back to the courts.
And unless we have these courts, unless there's openness and transparency, unless we know what's going on, if we can't trust what's going on in the courts, and Lord knows that we can't, that's when everybody starts losing faith in their government. And, as you say, it's the disciplinary arm of our government. And if that's not being run correctly, we're all in trouble, Andy. Yeah,
disciplinary arm of our whole society. I mean, when you don't have parents who are good disciplinarians, even though they're not visible, they're not there, the children act up, and that's I don't know if that's a completely proper metaphor for it, but it's kind of the same thing. You've got to know that there's an enforcement and a fair and equitable and honest enforcement mechanism to bring discipline on a society and all our personal affairs. That's the boils down to.
And regardless of what you look at, unless there's transparency, it's human nature. There's going to be things that are hidden, and these courts need to get opened up. We need to have public hearings. We need to have public forums. We need to have people coming forward talking about their experiences in these courts without retribution. We need to have lawyers that have the ability to come forward and be true whistleblowers and not have fear of losing their license. And certainly the time has come to have cameras and audio tape in these courtrooms. With that all being said, we're already to our first break. We're going to take our first break. When we come back, I'm looking forward to this. Jerry Birmelin, who's running for state representative in the 111th district. We're going to pick his brain, talk about what's important to him, and so hang in there. You're listening to Twigs Cafe Radio, and we'll be back shortly. We're going to make this place your home. Twigs Cafe Radio. This is Jasikoff and Friends, and you can give us a call at 570-836-2920. Leave us a message at 570 836-4771, twigscaferadio@gmail.com. Drop us an email off there, and we will read your emails over the air as it is appropriate. Right now we have Jerry Birmelin. He's running for state representative as a Republican candidate in the state representative district of 111th. But he's not new to this. For 22 years, he represented the 139th district. And welcome, Jerry.
Good to be here.
Yeah, good. Just get a little closer here. We're good there. There you go. And if you need to bring it up, that's fine too. And but tell us a little bit about yourself. Why are you getting back into this? You've been retired for about 9 years now, right?
Well, sort of semi-retired. I was doing other things, but I was a state rep for 22 years, really enjoyed it, but I felt that my time was up, that I had accomplished several things that I wanted to do, some of which took me quite a few years to do. I had grandchildren that I wanted to spend more time with, yep, and a few other things that led me to decide not to run in 2006. And I was a pretty happy camper for the first few years afterwards, but then we elected President Obama.
Uh-huh.
And then just more recently, we elected a governor, Tom Wolf, who
yep,
is to the left of Obama. And I'm really concerned about the state that my children and my grandchildren and great-grandchildren are growing up in. Having been there before, I know that what happens is push comes to shove, and governors oftentimes get their way if nobody pushes it back against them. And I think we're in for a long 3.5 years with this governor, maybe 8, unfortunately. And I think it takes people like myself who know the system, know what's going on, know how to fight effectively, to represent the people of Susquehanna and Wayne counties, which is where the district is, because we represent the values of our area. Otherwise, you have people from Philadelphia and Pittsburgh passing the legislation, and their values are not rural Pennsylvania values. So while Sandy Major is retiring and has done an admirable job of representing us, we need to replace her with someone who's going to stand up and be counted for on some of these very important issues.
There's a number of issues that we're going to touch on, but I know right now there's been a number of people talking to me about the budget and what's going on with the budget. And what is your take on that? Obviously, Wolf he's holding his ground, and as I understand it, the State House is kind of doing the same.
I think that the House and the Senate passed a responsible budget in early July. They passed a budget that was balanced, that increased spending in some areas by a small amount, but did not include any tax increases. Well, Governor Wolf has wanted to have an increase in the sales tax. He's wanted to have an increase in the personal income tax, and he wants to institute an extraction tax on the Marcellus shale drillers, all of which he will turn around and use to buy votes back with. He wants to spend money on things that don't need the amounts of money that he wants to raise through these taxes. And as I said earlier, the General Assembly passed a pretty good budget. It was a common sense budget with no tax increases and took care of the needs of Pennsylvania, but that wasn't enough for Governor Wolf. And he is literally at this point in time trying to blackmail the legislature to caving into what he wants them to do. He has vetoed the funding for the House and the Senate, both Republican and Democrat caucuses, so that all 4 caucuses have had to go out and borrow money, millions of dollars, to pay their staff. And the House, because there's 203 members, has probably over 1,000 employees that work for them, not only in Harrisburg, but they all have district offices. And the Senate maybe less, but still have several hundred staffers. So he is, in effect, trying to blackmail into giving him what he wants by withholding the money to pay their salaries and their benefits. And I think that's wrong. I think he's also made a big mistake because he has withheld money from our school districts. They're in the same boat as those 4 caucuses are. If you don't feel sorry for the senators and representatives, you should at least feel sorry for yourself if you pay property tax, because he withheld the funding for the school districts until late December. And then when he line item vetoed portions of the current budget, he allowed for no school districts to get money after January 1st. So they're back in the same boat that they were in July 1st. They're missing half a year's assurance that they're going to get their property taxes. So school districts are borrowing millions.
I was going to say that they're borrowing. It's not like we're not enough in debt, but it seems to me that they're being forced to borrow money at interest.
At interest, that's right. And that's going to have to come back through property tax increases or wage taxes, because that's the only way the school district can get the money back. because the state's not going to give them any more because they're already locked into a funding formula. So it's costing everybody in Pennsylvania more money that should not have been held back and causing interest loans that we're ultimately going to have to pay for as property owners.
You know, we've had a number of people on our show, and the foreclosures that are happening, people that are being taxed out of their homes, especially seniors, and just not being able to afford the increase in taxes. And here it just seems like something that's so logical. Lori, in this particular case, what he's talking about is that the money's being held back. The school districts now, I don't know about Tunkhannock here, but goes out. They have to borrow the money to make ends meet, but when they're borrowing the money, they're borrowing at interest, and it just doesn't make sense. This just seems like an extra cost that doesn't need to happen.
It's absolutely right. And when you're borrowing millions, you can imagine how much the interest is costing you.
And who supplies the loans?
Well, banks. Basically, they'll go to a bank, they'll ask for a $10 million loan so they can meet teacher staff, payments, and all the expenses that schools have, which are quite a few. And unfortunately, you have to pay interest on that. Banks don't loan the money for free. Yeah. And they may even give you a reduced rate, but they're going to charge the school districts. And there were school districts in the fall that were borrowing upwards of $20 million. This is across Pennsylvania. This is a statewide problem. And the governor has created this problem, this crisis. He should have said, okay, I didn't do my job of negotiating with the legislature to get what I wanted and then agree on something. No, he's just going to use the heavy hand of veto power, and he's going to create, and he has created problems for Pennsylvanians all across the state.
You know, we're going to get, especially in the second segment, and I definitely want to get into, some of your core issues, but before we get into all of that stuff, you're running against two opponents, correct? Two other Republicans in your district.
That's as far as I know at this point.
Right. Oh, that's right. Well, they're out collecting signatures now, right? There might be more. And then after this time frame, then you'll know exactly who you're running against in the primary. The ones that you are running against, what differentiates you, do you think, from them? And why should, Republicans in your district pick you as opposed to them?
Well, my primary selling point, if you will, I hate to use that phrase.
It's okay.
But, is that I've got 22 years of experience that has proven to be a very conservative track record. If you're a liberal listening to this radio program, you're not going to vote for me, but then you're probably not a registered Republican either. So I've been there for 22 years. I've got a track record in which I only voted for one tax increase in 22 years, and that was on the gasoline tax, and that was so that we got a better funding formula for rural counties that we hadn't had before. I've never voted for a budget that was more than the cost of living increase for that year. Got me in trouble with a couple of governors over that, too. But I think that you don't want to send somebody down to Harrisburg who's going to need 3 or 4 years to learn what's going on and know the issues before they're effective at anything. I honestly believe that I'll be effective from the minute I get there. I know how to legislate. I know how the committee system works. I know how to get legislation passed. And so do you want to hire a doctor who just came out of medical school to do your brain surgery, or do you want a doctor who's been doing it for 22 years? That's the example I would give you.
One of the things that have stuck out, and since we spent a little time here together before coming on air, was the thing that jumped out at me was that you don't need this. You're not doing this.
No, I don't need
it's not you've done it. You did it. You did it for 22 years, and right now you're going to say what you have to say, and if people don't like what you have to say, that's fine. I mean, but you're going to speak plainly and what's in your heart, and you're doing this for your kids and grandkids.
Yes, I am, and as you said, I don't need the job. I was living well off. I'm not a rich person, but I certainly have a few extra dollars to take my grandkids out to dinner once in a while. And I don't have all the responsibilities. I don't have the travel to Harrisburg that's required. The average legislator is away from his home a third of the year. Between the committee meetings and the session days, you're gone about 115 to 120 days a year from your family. Well, my family's all grown, so the only one that's really making the sacrifice of me being gone is my wife. And she's not really bothered by me going away.
Well, that was one of the other things. And Lori, one of the things that you know the way we are. We don't like to do ambush journalism, and we won't. And, so beforehand, we talk about some of the things that are important, not only to us, but important to the individual that's coming on. And one of the things I said, and I'm sensitive to this, I really am. I asked Jerry, I said, do you want to talk about your family? And he says, ask me any question you want, I will answer that. So how many kids and grandkids you have, and are they all from this area yet? Have they, and are you originally from the area? Have you been obviously here a long time?
Well, let me say, first of all my kids, grandkids, and great-grandkids are wonderful.
Great-grandkids. He has us beat, Laurie. Yeah. We're not into the great-grandkids yet, Jerry.
And they're not perfect. But actually, I've lived in the portion of Wayne County that I'm in, which is southern Wayne County, for the last 59 years of my life. So most of my life has been spent there. I do have 3 daughters. I have 9 grandkids, a mix of boys and girls, and I have 3 great-grandkids. So
nice. Very nice.
We really place a lot of emphasis on family, and we get together whenever we can. Most of them live near me, although as they're getting married, I have one in Seattle and I have one in Cleveland, and so we don't see them as often, unfortunately. But family has been very important to me. I grew up in a family that was disjointed. My mom and dad, I still haven't figured out why they wanted to have 5 kids. They did because they never really paid any attention to us. They never spent time with us.
Oh, wow.
I tell people this one fact about my family that most people find is really weird. My mom and dad never took me out to eat once in their lifetimes. Now, think of all the times you take your kids or your grandkids out to Burger King or McDonald's or whatever. They never took me out once. So
different era. Let's just put it on that. Let's blame it on that.
Yeah.
Well, you have to come to Twigs for dinner. I'll take you to dinner.
And I can recommend it highly. Their French onion soup is very good.
So,
but tell us about why you decided a little bit more. I know you had said family and grandchildren and stuff like that, but tell us a little bit more what triggered the decision.
Well, as I said earlier, the Obama administration has been doing things that I think are sending this country in the wrong direction. Now, unfortunately, maybe he may be replaced by Hillary Clinton, which is going to continue that same track record. I hope not. But what happens generally on the federal level begins to seep down into the state level. They start to pass these regulations and making the states do this and do that and the other thing. And what's going to happen is the reflection of the Obama administration is going to seep into the state level. And with a governor who we currently have, who is described as the most liberal governor in the United States, and an advocate of all that Obama has done in the last 7 years, he's going to want to implement a lot of that same stuff here in Pennsylvania. I think it's going to take people like myself who understand the legislative process and who have some backbone to stand up against this guy and say, we're not going to do it. And if I have to do it as a legislator with laws or vetoing things or making sure that things don't happen the way that we don't want them to, we have to stand up and fight for it. This country is worth fighting for. I don't know about all your listeners, but I think most of your listeners have this sense of things are going the wrong way, but I don't know what to do about it. Yes. Well, I know what to do about it as far as I'm concerned, and that is to run for the legislature, be a voice, stand up and be counted for. And if I get shot down and I'm not successful, that's one thing. But to not try, I can't live with myself if I don't do that. I think I have the tools and the experience it's going to take to stand up and represent Pennsylvania the way people in Wayne and Susquehanna counties would like to be represented. And so I offer myself as a candidate. And I'll leave that up to the voters to decide who they want to have there.
And we've actually been talking about the same thing. We've been encouraging people to get out and be part of the process. And I have run for office before. And I got to tell you, it's an experience. And what you learn by going through that experience is, you learn not only about your constituency, but you also learn about what's going on in ways that you would not normally learn, because people come to you with problems and all kinds of different things. And I agree with you. I really do think that it is one way to really make a difference in your community by getting out and voting. Before we go to our first break, and then when we do come back, I promise you that we're going to get into your specific issues, which is pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, anti-tax increases, pro-education choice, and proactive constituent services. But we do have a large following, a large audience that are very, very concerned with the judiciary, what's going on in the courts. And one of the things that we did mention before you just came on, in your 22 years while you were a representative, 20 of those you were actually on the House Judiciary Committee. And you had mentioned to us, or mentioned to me, about the only way that you could get public hearings and public forums is to go. Actually, the chairman of the judiciary has to approve that. It's not the individual. Like, I can't go to you, say you're elected, and say, Jerry, listen, I really want to have public hearings about what's going on in Lackawanna or Luzerne counties or whatever. And that has to go through the committee chair, correct?
That's correct. No, there's a minority and a majority chair for each committee. So in the House and the Senate, each Judiciary Committee has a minority and a majority.
Correct.
And in both cases, the majority are the Republicans.
Correct.
Democrats their chairman can also call public hearings. They do not have to be in the majority to do that.
What do we say? Wake me up, right?
So
We're going to hear that song. You know, this
so
is
you
a
actually have
beautiful thing.
You have 4 committee chairmen that you could appeal to.
Well, you know, and this is why this is what's so wonderful about what we're doing and having somebody like yourself here. I did not know that. And I suspect that there's a lot of folks out there that do not know that. And
well, that's what they call being in the weeds. No,
being in the weeds, that's right.
Having to know every little detail. And if you are in the legislature as long as I had been, you understand what the weeds are and how important it is to know the weeds.
How to get through them weeds.
That's part of being an effective legislator, is knowing what to do. I mean, I heard a story once of a legislator who had been there 20 years, didn't know how to introduce a bill.
Yeah,
I was introducing a bill within 6 months after my first election.
I'm a firm believer also into making sure that we have a conversation with our legislators, with people that are representing us, because in many ways they too need to be educated about. Nobody is all knowledgeable, and knowledge is certainly power. And this is Twigs Cafe Radio, Jasikoff and Friends, 570-836-2920, 570-836-4771. twigscaferadio@gmail.com is the email. And who we have in studio is Jerry Birmelin, 22 years in the state representative. As a state representative, he's running now as a Republican candidate for the state representative district 111th. And he is waking us up, Lori, and he's already woken me up, Jerry. So I appreciate that. You know, these little tidbits of knowledge that come out, nuggets from heaven, as Andy would say. And this is all great stuff. So now we can lay blame on both of those chairs, the minority chair and the minority chair, majority and minority chair of the judiciary, if they don't want to call for public hearings. But more importantly, right now you have five things that you really like to, or issues that really stick out with you: pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, anti-tax increases, pro-education choice, and proactive constituent services. You got the floor. Which one you want to start with?
Well, let's go right down the order in which you just presented them.
Okay.
And I will be brief, but I also would encourage people, if I don't forget to do that, to have you go to my website, which will give you a much more expanded information on all of these subjects. It's just jerrybirmelin.com, and if you don't know how to spell it right, you Google it, and it says, "Did you mean?" And they'll tell you the right spelling for it. So
Birmelin.
That's right, and Jerry with a J. So. First of all, the pro-life perspective, I've always been pro-life. I realize that if you don't have the right to life, you really don't have any other rights that matter. If they can take your life, innocent life, without any recourse. So I've always promoted legislation and all kinds of initiatives outside of legislation, people like CareNet and others who provide for crisis pregnancy women. I think it's very important that the government should recognize that you have a right to life in this country. Now, the Supreme Court doesn't agree with that and didn't with the Roe v. Wade decision of 40-some years ago, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't continue to fight for as many unsaved or unborn children as we can. The second is hold
on for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
As a legislature, then, how obviously as a representative, how can you affect what's going on with that? Are you talking mostly about funding towards maybe crisis centers or?
No, I'm talking primarily about legal protection. We passed the 1989 Abortion Control Act. At the time, we were having about 52,000 abortions in Pennsylvania per year. We passed the 89 Abortion Act, and last year the number of abortions was down in the 32,000 range.
Okay.
And that's a direct result of what we did. We also passed legislation where we used to pay for thousands of abortions because all a woman had to do was say, "I was raped," and she would get money to pay for the abortion. Now we said that you can say you're raped, but until you name the rapist, we will not pay for it.
Right.
We went from thousands of abortions to literally only a couple hundred a year because women were no longer using that lie that they had been raped to get a government paid for abortion. That again has reduced the number of abortions. We've seen a lot of adoption agencies that have stepped up in this case, and they've tried to provide for women with a crisis pregnancy and say, hey, we'll arrange for your baby to have a home.
Right.
If that's what you're worried about. If you can't take care of this child, please don't end its life. Give it life and then give it a new family. And we've seen those efforts, which are not necessarily governmental, but
right.
we've seen social agencies that do that. And this is where CareNet, for instance, it's a great organization, and they do things like that. They try to help women who have been abandoned by their boyfriends or their husbands, and their parents don't want anything to do with them, and they don't know where to go. So oftentimes, abortion to them is the only alternative, but it's really not the only alternative. There are other things
Education.
they can do. That's part of it, yeah. You want to move on to the Second
Second
Amendment?
Amendment.
I'm an advocate for people having the right to own guns and use them for legal purposes. I obviously don't think they should be using them for holdups and shooting people illegally. But it seems like all of the gun registration schemes and Obama's his executive orders, it's all aimed at the people that are the law-abiding citizens. And the criminals just sort of sit back and laugh because they don't care what laws you pass.
That is correct.
So we don't need any more gun laws. Maybe we need to do a little better job of enforcing them, but I will not support anything that restricts the ownership of a gun by anybody who uses it for legal purposes. The third thing is the anti-tax increases. As I mentioned earlier, there's only one tax increase I ever voted for, and it wasn't because we needed more money. It was because we needed to take care of our rural counties who weren't getting
enough money from the...
They weren't getting the right proportion of money. It was going to the larger counties, Lackawanna and Luzerne, and it was based on a 1972 funding formula, which never changed. When I voted for the tax increase, which I think was 5 cents a gallon, I'm not sure at this point, but what it did was it took a 5-year look back. So the 5 years in which they decide how much money each county gets adjusted every year. So if you had growth in the county and you had more cars and you had more licensed drivers and all these other factors, then you would be getting the money that you should get. And that's the only reason I voted for that tax increase at the time. The third issue I have listed here is pro-education choice. I was a teacher by trade. I taught for 10 years before I went into the legislature. I had taught in a Catholic school in Scranton, St. Paul's School. I was going to be doing my student teaching, and they came up with a teacher that they had to fire. So they went to the University of Scranton, where I was getting my degree, and they said, do you have anybody certified that could come in and teach? And they said, no. Do you have any student teachers? And they recommended me first. So I got paid for my student teaching, and it counted as a half-year experience. I then, a year and a half later, taught at Western Wayne School District, which is a public school. Taught there for 6 years, and then I moved literally across the street and taught at a private Christian school that my church operates, Canadian Christian Academy. In the meantime, after I left the legislature in 2006, in 2007, I was asked to serve on a school board of a cyber charter school. And for those of you listeners at home, a cyber charter school is a public school, but it's sort of like homeschooling with certified teachers. And I don't want to go into a long explanation, but so I have the experience of being on the board now for over 8 years of being on a cyber charter school, which, by the way, it's Commonwealth Connections Academy. It's the largest cyber charter school in Pennsylvania. It has over 9,000 students.
Wow.
And the last issue I have here is...
Okay. How about Common Core?
Put the brakes on me. I go pretty fast sometimes.
No, that's great. No, that's good. Common Core, where do you stand on
I'm
all of
opposed to that.
I would think so.
The research that I've done on it and the teachers that I've talked to, including teachers at Commonwealth Connections, they don't like it. I mean, and they tell me why. And again, we won't get into the weeds on this one, but it's not in the best interest of public education. We were signed on by Governor Corbett. I think he made a mistake when he did that. And I don't know how we're going to get out of it, except I know other states have. And if it takes legislation to do it, I would certainly vote for us to pull out of the Common Core guidelines.
Right.
Jerry, I know that you have a lot of other points to go over, but I don't know what that is.
Oh, Common Core?
No.
Oh, okay. It's basically...
Kind of like the Bible again.
No, that's okay. Right. You've never done an interview like this before.
Yes, I have, actually. Common Core is a set of standards that is being promoted by what I call the internationalist education people of our country, trying to make our education conform to what other countries do. In the process that it does that, it's eliminating some things that teachers think ought to be taught and teaching things from a certain perspective that they don't think should be taught. It's a long list of things that that they're opposed to.
No,
so
it gives me a good
but that's
idea.
what it is, and it's been voluntary to date. And Governor Corbett signed. We didn't have to join the Common Core standards, but he did. What it will ultimately do is what I think happens in New York State, where they teach to the Regent test. It's going to cause us to teach to the Common Core standards, and I don't think that's in the best interest of education. For instance, I'm told in the English areas they're not going to be teaching the classics, or not too many of them anymore, and that's not a good thing. So, and it goes through math, and probably
the math is crazy. I mean, I see some of the way they teach the math. It could be, I don't know if you've seen this. 2 + 2 could be 5 or something. I don't even know how they do some. They round the stuff out, and it's really. It's quite different. One of the other things, we had some individuals on yesterday, and we got into education a little bit, and the lack of civics that is being taught in the school.
Terrible. It's terrible.
I mean, nobody knows. I mean, they know nothing about, and nothing about our own history, about government, what the role of government should be, what the role of individuals or the constituents should be. It doesn't seem like any of that's being taught, and whatever is being taught doesn't seem like it's quite accurate at times either.
U.S. News and World Report did a survey 20 years ago. This is 20 years ago. And asked people who had graduated from high school how many American government and or civics classes they had. They found out through the survey that most people only had one class in their last 4 years of high school. One.
It's unbelievable.
And many of them never had it after they got out of 10th grade. So even their last 2 years, they didn't have it. Now, when I went to high school, you got it as a part of your history classes every year. You were, current events was taught in the class. And so it's no wonder that, a lot of people don't know who their vice president is. They don't know how to vote. They don't know how to register to vote. And
they don't know about the Constitution. No. They don't know about our history. I mean, that was one of the things that were brought up yesterday, that you mentioned Jefferson, supposedly they have no idea that Declaration of Independence, Madison was the Constitution. There's all
You're making me look really good now. at least I've got that down. But,
I mean, I don't know how that gets changed and where you're at, but I think you're hitting the points.
It will not get better with Common Core. That's the thing, because the international education community doesn't want you learning nationalism. They want you to be a world citizen. They don't want you to be an American citizen first. They want you to be a world citizen. Well, to do that means to give up some of the American values that we hold very dear in our society. And when you do that to your young people, they don't appreciate being an American. They don't understand the history, how we got where we are, and they certainly don't understand the Constitution and that we are a self-governing nation, because they don't know how to do it and they haven't been taught that. And that was one of the obstacles that I found when I taught at Western Wayne. I was teaching Pennsylvania history and civics, and the kids were looking at me like deer in the headlights. What are you talking about? Yeah. I'm talking about the Constitution and, fighting the War of Independence and all these other things. And they're saying, oh, Mr. Birmelin, we never heard this before. And they're in 9th grade.
The basics.
Yeah. I mean, and that was, I haven't taught for 40 years now, I think, or so. Well, 35 anyway. But, I mean, that's showing in our population. And why do you think when you see an advertisement for a politician on TV, all they talk about is what they're going to give you?
Right.
That's what people think government's here for, to give them things. That's not what it's here for. But we've trained a whole generation to say, gimme, gimme, gimme. And to do that is a lie, first of all, because you can't ever give people enough of what they want.
That's exactly
But secondly,
right.
That's not the role of government. The role of government is not wealth transfer. It's not to take from the rich and give to the poor. Where our government's not supposed to be Robin Hood.
That's right.
Even though he was a thief, by the way. But so, I'm concerned about the education that our kids are getting. I'm concerned about their lack of knowledge, and I'm concerned about the political process, which feeds on this misconception of what government's all about.
You got, I think I couldn't have said it better myself here. And then proactive constituent services.
Yeah. When I say proactive, I mean go find out what's going on in your community. If there are problems to be solved, be a part of the solution. many legislators sort of hunker back and they sit in their offices and hope nobody comes in to see them. My attitude when I was in office was I want to know what's going on with the people I represent. If there's a bridge that should be fixed and it hasn't been fixed, I'm going to go talk to the people at PennDOT and maybe arrange a meeting, go on site, and let's see what we can do to fix this. Let's not wait until the bridge gets closed because it's unsafe. Or if we've got a stream problem, I did a lot of stream problems when I was a legislator before, where you get a heavy rain or whatever, maybe a month of rain, and it washes out a bank and it just sits there and nobody does anything about it. Well, I would get a meeting together with DEP and whoever else was responsible for that and put some gabion baskets in there or whatever. Let's get that stream bed back to where it should be. So that's the sort of thing I'm talking about. Proactive means that you don't wait till somebody's banging your door down and say, help, help, help. You find out what's going on. You attend meetings in the community. You talk to the people who are community leaders, township supervisors, and borough council, and the people who know what's going on in their districts, and try to find out if there's anything they need help with. And do the good thing that you can do as a legislator, and that is bring in the state's resources to solve problems when it's appropriate.
And being part of the community, getting out in that community and knowing what's going on, that's all part of...
Yeah, one of the first things I did when I was elected back in '84 was I traveled every single road of the district. Now, then it was just as rural as 111th is now, and I must have spent the first 3 weeks just driving around, just seeing what's there, where the bridges and the rivers were and the towns. And I think to represent people, you need to know them. You need to know where do they live and what kind of problems are they facing and what does it look like where they live. And I think that's an important part of being a legislator.
And if you want to learn more about Jerry Birmelin, that's Jerry, JerryBirmelin.com. We've already done, man. We went 40 minutes. It flew by. It's hard to believe.
I'll put that up on the website. I'll put that up on Facebook and.
Yeah, I have a Facebook connection. If you go to my website, you can link onto my Facebook. I love the comments I get on Facebook.
Well, Jerry, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll have you back when hopefully if you prevail, and you're going to be on the ballot, so you're welcome to come back anytime. The primary's not till May, is it?
No, it's April 26th this year because it's a presidential year.
Okay, so on April 26th, people will be out voting, and you're welcome to come back. I really found you to be very interesting, and some of the information that you shared is very, very helpful. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You betcha. So that's it. Jasikoff and friends, we're done. And you've been listening to Twigs Cafe Radio. And when we come back, it's Sanity Check. We got Terry Martins coming in, Mark Chamberlain with his new book, and a whole host of other kind of conversations. So you hang with us, and we'll be back.